On October 17, 2000, a high-speed train was racing through Hatfield, England at about 115 miles per hour when something almost invisible changed everything. The locomotive stayed upright, but one cracked rail shattered beneath the train. Several cars derailed, 4 people died, and more than 70 were injured. The strange part is that the rail wasn't missing. It hadn't rusted away. From a distance, it still looked like an ordinary piece of steel doing its job. The real danger was hiding inside it. That disaster forced engineers to ask a question that still shapes railways today. How do you know when a railroad track has reached the end of its life before it actually breaks? Because waiting for a rail to fail is the one test you never want to run. Let's get into it right here on Small Things. Why steel won the railroad? The earliest railways did not begin with the steel rails we recognize today. Some tracks used wood, others moved to cast iron, then wrought iron. As locomotives became heavier and traffic increased, wood wore quickly. Cast iron lasted longer but could be brittle under impact. Wrought iron was tougher, yet growing axle loads and more frequent trains eventually demanded more. Steel changed that balance. As railway networks expanded, that extra durability mattered more and more. A rail that lasted longer meant fewer replacements, fewer interruptions, and a track better suited to the heavier locomotives of the industrial age. Steel offered a stronger combination of toughness, wear resistance, and durability, supporting heavier trains while surviving far more wheel impacts. That did not make steel permanent. Railways adopted it because it could absorb more punishment for longer than the materials it replaced, and the punishment is concentrated in a much smaller area than the size of a train might suggest. How thousands of tons wear down a rail. A freight train can weigh several thousand tons, but that weight is not spread gently across the whole track. What matters is the point where each steel wheel meets the rail. The contact area is small, so every passing wheel creates intense localized stress. Over thousands of trains, the rail begins to change. The railhead, the upper surface that directly supports the wheels, slowly wears down. Its profile becomes less precise. Small defects can appear on the surface, while repeated loading may also create microscopic cracks beneath it. Some of that damage is easy to see. Some is buried inside the steel. The environment adds more stress. Heat expands the rail, cold contracts it, moisture reaches exposed surfaces, and heavy braking adds forces beyond ordinary rolling contact. One train does almost nothing. 10,000 trains are another story. That is why railways do not wait for a visible fracture. By then, the situation may already be unsafe. The real goal is to find trouble while the rail still looks serviceable. That leads to a harder question. How do engineers know a rail is approaching the end of its job when part of the damage may be invisible? How railways know when a rail is finished. Railways inspect track in several different ways. Crews look for wear, cracks, surface damage, and changes in alignment. Specialized measurement vehicles check rail geometry over long distances, while other systems search for hidden defects. One of the most useful methods is ultrasonic testing. Equipment sends high-frequency sound waves through the steel and measures how they return. An internal crack changes that pattern, revealing damage beneath an apparently intact surface. The important point is that inspection is preventive. Crews are not looking only for rails that have failed, they are looking for warning signs that a rail may no longer meet the standard required for that route. A rail can be removed for several reasons. Its head may have worn beyond the railway's operating limit. It may contain a defect that makes continued service unsafe. or the railway may be upgrading the route to a heavier or stronger rail capable of carrying greater loads. That last case matters because the old rail may still be useful. Removed from the main line and useless are not the same thing. And when one rail comes out, the rest of the track does not necessarily come with it. What actually gets replaced? A railway track is more than two steel rails. Fasteners hold the rails to sleepers, while ballast helps distribute loads and stabilize the track. If one rail section becomes worn, crews can replace it while leaving other components in service. The fault may be in the rail, while the sleepers, fasteners, and ballast remain serviceable. So rail replacement can be surprisingly selective. This is easy to miss because we tend to think of the track as one object. In practice, each component wears at its own rate, and maintenance can target only the part that has reached its limit. From a passing train, a section of track may look like one complete object. Maintenance crews see a collection of parts with different jobs and different lifespans. Once the worn rail is lifted out, the question changes. The railway no longer asks whether it can stay in that exact location. It asks what the rail can still do somewhere else. The first retirement. A busy main line may carry heavy freight, fast passenger trains, or dense traffic every day, so railways keep strict limits on wear, defects, and rail profile. But not every track asks for the same performance. A quieter track may ask much less of the same piece of steel. That difference is what gives some retired rail a second railway career. A rail removed from a major route may still have years of useful life on a slower or lighter-duty line. Recovered rail has historically been reused on industrial sidings, yard tracks, short branches, mine railways, and other places where speeds and axle loads are lower. Sometimes the rail leaves railway service altogether. Because rail steel is thick, tough, and already shaped into a strong structural section, old lengths have also been used as posts, barriers, supports, and material for agricultural or industrial projects. In those jobs, the carefully shaped running surface that once mattered to a train wheel may no longer matter at all. Retirement can happen in stages. A rail might begin on a busy main line, move to lighter railway duty, then spend years as a structural component before finally reaching the scrap pile. Eventually, though, there comes a point when keeping the rail in its original shape no longer makes sense. Then the question changes again, not, what can this rail still do, but what can this steel become? When a railroad track becomes scrap steel. Once a rail has no practical future in its existing form, crews or contractors collect it and move it away from the railway. Rails are long, heavy, awkward pieces of steel, so they are not convenient scrap. At a processing site, sections may be sorted, cut into manageable lengths, and stripped of unwanted attached materials before moving to a recycling facility. Hours earlier, the rail was part of a transportation network. Now it is being handled as raw material. Years of traffic may have ruined the rail's working surface, but most of the metal is still there. That is why sending it into the steel-making system makes sense. The railway may have used up the rail's original geometry, but it has not used up the steel. From this point on, the old track no longer needs to remain recognizable. What mattered to the railway was its precise shape and condition. What matters to the recycler is the steel that remains. Its next destination is the furnace. The second life inside the furnace. Prepared rail scrap can become part of the feedstock for an electric arc furnace. Inside, powerful electrical energy generates enough heat to melt the steel. Once the metal is liquid, it can be refined and its chemical composition adjusted for the properties required by the next product. That step matters because steel is not one universal recipe. Structural sections, plates, bars, and machinery components can require different properties, so melting an old rail does not mean simply casting another rail. Instead, the material returns to the manufacturing cycle. It may become structural steel, bars, plates, machine parts, or something else whose appearance gives no hint of its railway past. A rail that carried freight across a continent might later support a building, become part of a machine, or return to transportation in a completely different form. The rail is gone, the steel continues, but there is one case where melting the old shape would destroy something that cannot be made again. When old steel is worth more, as history. A rail from an ordinary siding may be scrap. A rail from a famous station can be an artifact. Sections from historic routes, bridges, stations, or abandoned lines may be saved by museums and preservation groups because they represent a particular place or period. In that setting, the steel's physical condition is no longer the whole story. A steel mill cares about the metal itself. A museum may care more about where that metal once carried trains. The same worn rail can therefore hold different kinds of value at different points in its life. Practical value while it serves the railway, material value when it becomes recyclable steel, and historical value when its past becomes worth preserving. That is why some rails never reach the furnace at all. Think back to that scarred rail lying beside the track. At first, it looked like a piece of infrastructure that had simply worn out, but its next destination depends on what is still useful about it. If enough strength remains, it may work somewhere less demanding. If its original shape no longer serves a purpose, the steel can be cut, melted, and transformed. If its history matters, it may survive exactly as it is. A railroad does not necessarily discard a rail when it stops being good enough for trains. It simply stops using it for the job that demanded the most from it. For decades, the shape of the steel determines its purpose. Once that purpose ends, the material can begin another life. Have you ever seen old railroad rails reused somewhere unexpected? Tell us in the comments and suggest another ordinary object whose afterlife we should explore next. Subscribe to Small Things for more stories hidden inside the simple things around us.